Let's talk about mandate madness. It is totally out of control.
These garbage vaccine mandates.
You need to give up your freedoms and just let him make the decision for you.
None of this is about the science. It's about control. It's about government trying to assume more control. It's about moving America more in the direction of Cuba or China.
If they can force you to violate your own conscience, to put something in your body you don't want, you are done. You have no more dignity. They control you.
President Biden's big plan to get millions of American workers vaccinated has been a smash success at making conservatives very mad. GOP governors say they'll fight him, even to the gates of hell, which really means they're all going to the same place Americans go to resolve our traffic tickets, divorces, and daytime series finales. The pandemic is going to court. Anti-vax TikTok has turned a new corner of what the fuck.
From now on, I refuse to be referred to as unvaccinated. I want everyone to now call me pure blood.
It's a nickname that I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and assume is just a reference to the lifted pinky set of child wizards.
See, the thing is, Harry, there's some wizards, like the Malfoy family, who think they're better than everyone else because they're what people call pure blood.
That's horrible.
That is horrible, Harry. The so-called purebloods aren't the only ones celebrating vulnerability to contagious disease as a dope upgrade to their personal brand. So are thousands looking for love at Unjected, aka Tinder for anti-vaxxers, which Apple ejected off of its App Store, but is still going strong, or at least existing, on the web. Some anti-vaxxers are apparently tossing around the idea of setting up a vacation resort for the unvaccinated in Zanzibar. But how would you get there, you ask? They've thought of that too, with something called a Freedom Airline, which I imagine would be the only airline where recycled air is a selling point. As this deadly pandemic lumbers into its third excruciating year, it's painfully clear that some folks are just not going to be convinced to take the vaccine. Hell, noted vaccine skeptic Eric Clapton is knocking out protest ballads against public safety measures.
But this has gotta stop. Enough is enough. I can't take this BS any longer.
Which makes Clapton the Bob Geldof of anti-vaxxers. All we are saying is give respiratory disease a chance. The hardening of vaccine resistance into a lifestyle choice helps explain why the US is lagging behind Europe in vaccinations and running ahead in infections and deaths. It explains why hospitals are so full that some people are dying just waiting for medical attention. And it explains why Joe Biden is done asking nicely.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
He's betting that as much as we love boomer rock, taking medical advice from aging boomer rockers, and amateur tropical getaways, there's something we love even more. Our jobs. Okay, not the jobs. They're getting paid. Biden is ordering companies with 100 or more employees to make sure their staff are vaccinated or getting tested for COVID every week, or else face a nearly $14,000 fine per violation. Naturally, Republicans love this.
More than 20 Republican governors are lined up in opposition.
It's just flat out tyrannical.
This is a propaganda campaign to basically label anyone who's not vaccinated as an extremist.
Again, it's an obscene overstepping of authority. It needs to be challenged in the courts.
Saying he's losing patience with people. You know, at the end of the day, we don't live with a one-person rule in this country. We live in a constitutional system.
To put it in terms my 8-year-old niece would approve of, there are a few buckets of horse pucky in this debate. For starters, vaccine mandates are not unconstitutional. They're as old as the Republic. Noted socialist and diehard freedom hater George Washington ordered mandatory smallpox inoculation for the Continental Army in 1777 over intense objections. Spoiler alert, he won, and so did his inoculated army. The Supreme Court upheld state-level vaccine mandates twice, in 1905 and 1922. Back then, cops in New York and Boston were literally conducting nighttime raids on tenements and holding people down while vaccinators stuck needles in their arms. Today, every single state in the US mandates vaccines for school children. Although you wouldn't know it to hear governors pounding the table over Biden's iron vaccine dictatorship. Thank you, Vaccine Mussolini. Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves blasted Biden for a terrifying unconstitutional move and vowed Americans would keep their freedom from tyrants. But Reeves' state has one of the toughest school vaccine mandates in the country. Mississippi doesn't even allow for religious exemptions. Now, despite all this history, there is a lot that's brand new about Biden's move. The established mandates have been state mandates, and this one is being implemented by a federal agency called the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, which has never done anything exactly like this before. OSHA's job is supposed to be making sure people have a safe place to work with, like, hole punchers that don't explode or whatever. But OSHA typically takes years to develop rules and order companies to implement them. Biden ordered OSHA to move a hell of a lot faster than it normally does by issuing an emergency temporary standard, a maneuver with its own rocky history. Before COVID, the agency had only issued such an emergency standard 9 times, and 5 of those were successfully challenged in court, wholly or partially, including the most recent one, which was way back in 1983. So there is at least a question about whether the 1970 law that established OSHA really gives Biden the power to make this move. And that brings us to perhaps Biden's biggest problem. The court that gets the final say is dominated by conservatives, including 3 justices installed by former President Donald Trump. Nobody knows for sure which way they'll go, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Biden's order covers 80 million people in the private sector. Throw in about 20 million more federal and healthcare workers who have their own separate mandates, and you've got 2/3 of the American workforce. Success would mean millions of people get vaccines who otherwise wouldn't, and the country takes a big step toward making the pandemic go poof. Failure would mean, hell, who knows how long we'll be at the same old routine, and how long I'll be reading the news from this stupid couch, while you check it out during undeclared little work breaks from home. Don't think I don't know. The courts will decide the future of this pandemic in lots of other important ways too, including who can force their doctors to hand out unproven medication commonly used to kill worms in livestock, because, well, who knows? Might do something.
Well, even though it's unproven, as you said, a majority of Polk County commissioners now say that people should be given the chance to at least give it a shot.
Researchers at the Medical University of South Carolina are now conducting clinical trials to not only help with the fight against COVID-19, but to also settle a few heavily contested questions surrounding the drug Ivermectin.
Ivermectin fans like to point out that there is a version for humans intended to combat parasites, like lice. It's just that COVID isn't caused by a parasite. It's caused by a virus. And the FDA, CDC, and American Medical Association all warn against using this drug to treat COVID. Sky-high demand for ivermectin prompted the FDA to tweet, "You are not a horse. You are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it." Note the y'all for extra folkiness. But I dare you to try that one on a judge.
Ivermectin is not authorized to treat the virus. Now a local judge is ordering doctors to administer it to one patient at UC Health's Westchester Hospital.
Relatives of sick patients have been demanding ivermectin, and courts in New York, Ohio, Illinois, and Louisiana have backed them up. It's like going to your doctor for legal advice, and he's like, "Your lawyer is a flop-headed ding-dong, and we're doing this my way." It's not just Biden's mandates that are being fought over. There are the mandates against mandates. Some states have banned vaccine passports. Some have banned vaccine mandates for public employees, and some of those bans include health workers. Generally, these rules don't affect private employers, who are, of course, the sacred ivermectin-guzzling cows of the GOP, but not in Montana, which banned private employers from hiring or firing anyone based on their vaccination status. So far, in smaller fights over mandates, the courts have largely sided with team mandate. Students at Indiana University lost their challenge to the university's vaccine mandate, as did employees of Houston Methodist Hospital. Let's just say we're still a long way to the gates of hell. One of the strongest tools for getting out of mandates has a long history of legal heft: religious exemptions. Just ask the more than 2,600 LAPD employees reportedly planning to seek religious exemptions from the city's vaccine mandate. Or the pastor in Tulsa, who will personally sign a religious exemption form for you if you join his congregation, which involves, you guessed it, a donation.
If your pastor doesn't have the courage to sign it, I'll sign it for you.
It remains to be seen whether millions of Americans will abruptly decide that the vaccine might just be the mark of the beast.
Is the vaccine the mark of the beast? Ready for the answer? No.
Then there will be the arguments and legal battles over whether those who say that they think it is maintain that view as a quote-unquote sincerely held belief, which is the standard set out by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, under which employers must create reasonable accommodations for employees. That is a hard question to answer, but it's also the kind of murky debate the courts have a long history of wrestling with when the rest of us can't agree nicely. After all, we've been here before. Take smallpox. After the Supreme Court ruled vaccine mandates were fair game over a century ago, the last natural smallpox outbreak in America occurred in 1949. The World Health Assembly declared smallpox eradicated in 1980, which is just one reason to believe that vaccine mandates, when properly implemented, can be highly effective in stomping out infectious disease. Or at least, that's what the scientists and the historians say. Whether or not they work this time is up to a totally different group of pros, the lawyers.